Thanks everybody for turning out. This is such an incredibly important cause. I've been following the climate issue for over a decade now, since I was basically fresh out of high school. And back at that point, the sentiment among scientists, at least at my university, was that we were moving to try to prevent climate change, and that was sort of the talk. Today, it's not so much about preventing climate change, because we've already committed ourselves to some amount of climate change. The sentiment has changed already in this 10 or so year period to preventing the worst of climate change. Now, I've been, sort of an academic and publishing papers. I do mostly air pollution, air quality research, and in the last couple of years, since I finished my graduate training, I've felt a little bit like publishing more studies is not really what we need right now. Most of the public never reads these studies. They're important, but we've got enough great scientists publishing these studies. I wanted to take a break from that sort of tradition and actually do outreach and communication of that science to the public. And that's how I find myself here today, 3,000 miles away from California. As Rosemary mentioned, Athena and I have traveled for the last month via car to get here. We're on a 3-month journey. Climate change still to a lot of people is numbers, it's statistics, it's the 400 parts per million threshold. It's these things that are still a bit abstract to a lot of people. What we're doing is we're interviewing communities, we're speaking with communities, we're interviewing farmers in Iowa and South Dakota, and we're showcasing all the impacts that people are actually feeling in this country, and we're sort of trying to weave the climate story together in this country for this country so people can see. We're showcasing all these interviews on a website. We were just up at Rocky Mountain National Park, where we had a tour by park rangers who were explaining to us the adverse impacts of bark beetles and how they're devastating literally millions of acres of Colorado pine forest. I've learned that Cape Cod is no stranger to the bark beetle anymore, and neither is New York and New Jersey. We're definitely seeing the climate impacts. Athena and I have witnessed it on the road firsthand. People, like I mentioned, in Iowa are seeing torrential floods exceeding what they've ever experienced before. One farmer's neighbor's entire potato crop was wiped out. All the potatoes were exposed by floodwaters, and they all rotted. And his deal with Whole Foods didn't get met. People in Ohio we spoke with, one lady has lost 2/3 of her backyard because the river keeps growing and growing, because torrential downpours are literally becoming more intense. They're seeing more rain in 24-hour periods than ever before. Here in Cape Cod, you know that the sea level, coastal erosion, you've got ticks expanding in range. So the question is, what is preventing the worst of climate change? What is the worst of climate change? Somebody alluded to 4 degrees of warming by the end of the 21st century. What does that mean? Well, we have projections as to what that means in terms of sea level rise, and this basically sends home the message that it still is very worth doing something about climate change. It's not a foregone conclusion. The trajectories for sea level rise by the end of the 21st century range from 1 foot of sea level rise, best case scenario, to now the upper bound has been risen by scientists, 8 feet of sea level rise by the end of the 21st century. So that's just in about 80 years. I'm 6 feet tall. You can picture what 8 feet looks like. It's definitely important that we do something today, because where we go with sea level rise by the end of the century depends entirely on how we act today. Now, I'm a big fan of behavioral change, reducing our carbon footprints. I think we all ought to do that, most definitely. However, we've seen decades go by, and our individual actions of benevolence haven't been enough thus far to take us where we need to go. What's really critical is to continue doing our civic duty, pressuring our politicians, calling them. If I could have one takeaway from everybody today, it would be to call your local congressman, congresswoman, tell them, I need you to put a price on carbon dioxide emissions so we can stop allowing the treatment of the atmosphere as a free waste dump, or I will not vote for you. These are the kinds of signals that our politicians need to see so we can pass sweeping legislation that allows us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and steer the climate in a positive direction quickly enough and with enough magnitude. Thank you so much. We do have a website where we're sharing our whole journey. It's roadforclimateaction.com. Also in the little blue car in the back, I'm selling some books, which basically the book that I've recently published is to debunk 50 misconceptions on climate change to help basically steer people in, towards a better understanding of the issue. I think if we all know about climate change, we probably know somebody who doesn't, and that's sort of the goal of the book. Thank you all again for being here, because this presence today is exactly what we need to really solve this crisis. So I think we should all applaud for each other. This is fantastic.